What's going on, y'all? Bud Elliott here of the Cover 3 College Football Podcast. This is the Cover 3 Recruiting Hour, and that is my man, Andrew Ivins, who joins us every Tuesday. Ivins, what's going on, man?
Not much, bud. Some fall weather showing up here in
Yes.
Orlando. I'm enjoying it. Got to hit the links over the weekend. Hey, we had a big rankings update. So that's in the books, man. No, I'm just burning the tape, as always.
It was nice to see everyone on the internet agree with all the rankings you guys put out. And everybody, I'm sure you know, has also watched all of the tape, just as our team has. So fantastic. Some guys who we got to see in person over the weekend. Man, I think it's safe to say that receivers in the state of Florida are back in a big way. I got to see Malachi Toney torch my Knowles in person there in Tallahassee with multiple explosive plays. And obviously nice to see the debut of Dallas Wilson in Gainesville. And honestly, like, receiver play in the state of Florida had been down for a minute, at least in terms of guys coming out of the state. I don't really know why, but man, there's a lot to be excited about right now.
Yeah, but I think it's kind of like ebbs and flows with the wide receiver position. I mean, if you count them up, I think anywhere from 15 to 20 are going to sign Power 4 programs each recruiting cycle. And look, over the past 5 years, this was surprising to me when I looked it up. The Sunshine State has produced just one first-round wide receiver. That was Zay Flowers, who went to Boston College and is now in the league. The 3 years prior, they had guys go in the first rounds in 3 consecutive drafts, right? That was like Jerry Jeudy, Calvin Ridley, Hollywood Brown. So there's been a dip in the wide receiver play. I think some of the high-profile guys maybe haven't panned out, but now you look at college football here in 2025, and some of the best wide receivers in the sport, some of the most promising guys, they're all from the state of Florida. Now, are they all going to go in the first round? I don't know. But I think there's a good chance these guys are eventually going to be playing on Sundays. You know, obviously Jeremiah Smith. He's the name everyone knows. But man, this freshman class, you said it, Malachi Toney, Dallas Wilson, Vernell Brown at Florida. This is an exciting little trio there. And then really, I mean, you can expand this out across the sport. Guys all over the place. You got Jordan Faison at Notre Dame. He's from Florida. Romello Brinson at SMU. He's from Florida. Michael Trigg, I don't know if you consider him a wide receiver or tight end, but hey, he's from Florida. You know, I think he leads all tight ends nationally in receiving yards. J.C. Brown at Kansas State. So a lot of guys. And I want to ask you this, but I mean, you saw Malachi Toney in person. He's quickly kind of turned into one of the stories of college football. Like, I think people don't understand from the television broadcast, he is not a big dude. I mean, he kind of looks like a child out there.
He definitely looks like really small, but I think he's strong for his size, right? Like I bet you that guy in the weight room has better numbers than you would guess if you saw him without the pads on. You know, but the quickness with which he plays, the change of direction, like the feel he has for the game, for a guy that has not played a ton of receiver is really quite exceptional. And Florida State in that game went all in to stop the run by formation. They're loading the box. Miami knew they'd get those one-on-ones, and that's kind of FSU's only hope right there, just because Miami's offensive line is so good. And they're like, hey, we're going to pitch it out to Toney a couple times. Some nice creative screens from the offensive coordinator there from Miami, whose name is now slipping my mind, but I think he does a great job. And like Toney made them pay repeatedly. Like he was exceptional, man, and just outruns a defense that isn't that slow. So you can see a lot of the screen stuff here. I mean, you got a lot of bodies in the box to try to take away the run, and you're getting a lot of one-on-one matchups with the guy. And they found creative ways to get him the ball underneath, and he just took it and gets upfield quickly. Like there's some dance, but it's not like dance for the purpose of dancing. He does seem to have a pretty good feel for where the sticks are as well. Let's kind of get into his background story a little bit, because Ivins, he was a 3-star, right? And like people are gonna get and look, I mean, for a guy playing this well as a true freshman, I get the criticism. We're not going to get every single one right, but his background story is really quite interesting.
Yeah, I mean, well, he was the number 55 wide receiver, I think, in the class. And he was a kid that elected to skip his senior year of high school. And I don't think anyone like in the country studies like the whole reclassification process more than me, or has gone into detail. So much so that like Power Four programs are consulting me and asking for my research. And it's like, hey, I'm a one-man department here. I don't got, 20 interns, burning the midnight oil trying to look this up. And look, Malachi Toney was like right there on the cut line for us. Is he going to be a 4-star? He finishes as the highest ranked 3-star prospect possible. And the big concerns for us were, how big is he? This is a kid that never ran anywhere. He never measured anywhere. I mean, he was just a football player, and he comes out of American Heritage, which has sent a ton of guys to the NFL. I mean, they got one of the highest paid cornerbacks in the league right now, and Pat Surtain Jr. there, Brian Burns. I mean, you keep going down and down the list of all the guys that have come out of American Heritage. And every time I was there, back to the days when like Brandon Innes was kind of the big draw, Mark Fletcher at American Heritage, the coaching staff pointed to Malachi Toney. They said, hey, this is the guy, this is the guy, this is the guy. And you look at him and off the hoof, you're like, really? Like, I mean, he's listed 5'11". That might be a little generous. I think he's grown. Certainly 16, 17, 18-year-olds can get bigger and bigger. But like the speed markers kind of was a concern. With that being said,
because he never ran.
It was, but you turn on the tape and you're like, man, this guy just knows how to get open. And I think in, the final line in my scouting report, and thankfully I put this there, ability to deliver in key moments throughout his football career, despite not being the biggest, despite not being the fastest, shouldn't be overlooked. And I think that fits Malachi Toney to a T. But the other thing about his recruitment, right? So he reclassifies. Hey, he's not going to play his senior year. He's going to go into college early. A lot of people forget, like, he decommitted from Miami this time last year. And right away, reports came out, hey, Florida State, Oregon. Can you imagine Malachi Toney at Oregon there with Decorian Moore? Alabama. They were all involved. But Malachi Toney never set up official visits. And I remember sitting and kind of talking with some college contacts. A lot of people had the same concerns and question marks I did. So that's why Malachi Toney, to me, is the evaluation of the week, right? We did it last week with Anthony Smith at Minnesota. Malachi Toney, I mean, Miami, they just didn't overthink this, right? They knew it was a very, very good football player, a guy that had cut his teeth against elite defensive backs for the past 3 years, and really more than 3 years, since he was in the youth leagues, and a guy that just knows how to get open. So credit Shannon Dawson, the play caller at Miami.
There you go.
Credit Mario Cristobal, credit his entire staff, because wide receiver was this huge question mark for the Hurricanes coming into the season, especially after they lost Xavier Restrepo. And I think a lot of what we said about Malachi Toney applies to Xavier Restrepo, just a football player that can deliver in key moments. And they didn't overthink it. And he has been certainly a major part of that offense. And I don't think there's any reason why that won't be the case moving forward.
And to just kind of go back through my mind here, there, like, for every guy who doesn't run, who turns out to be good, there are probably 10 or 20 who don't run because they're actually slow and they don't want to actually have the world figure out they're slow, or they don't want to measure in, because they're actually 5'8" and not what they say at 5'11". Like some guys don't participate and don't want to participate against the best, and they don't want to show it. And that's their choice. But I would say way more often than not, it's a bit of a red flag. In Malachi Toney's case, it wasn't. But the same thing as me, man. These guys that they skip the height weight station, right? They kind of go over there like, okay, all right, I'm about 6'3" in shoes. If I go stand there and you say you're 6'5", and I'm looking down on you, buddy, you ain't 6'5", right? Same thing with, like, how many times do we have a high school coach tell you, man, this guy's the guy, like he's the guy, and you're like, man, I'm looking for college prospects, I'm not looking for high school studs, right? Like, they always vouch for these undersized guys. Occasionally works out. With Toney, it has. I mean, there's so many I could list. I'm like, man, he's good at high school football. It doesn't mean he's going to be at college football. There's a difference. Like, height, weight, speed more often than not matters. And even when guys you trust, they vouch for these really small guys, and usually they bust.
Well, it's certainly, when we look at NFL draft trends, and we're always going back and looking at our old rankings, like betting on the small guys is usually a losing practice. But there's always going to be the exception to the rules. And I think that would certainly be Malachi Toney. And what was the difference with him? Again, I'm going to keep going back to that term, football player. In the state title game last year, right? Bell, the Texas quarterback commit, Elite 11 Finals MVP. Remember, he got hurt. It was Malachi Toney playing quarterback. He completed 15 of 17 passes in the state title game for American Heritage, and just a natural difference maker. The other thing, Bud, since I've been doing this, I can only recall 2 players where we've ranked them super high that didn't have 40-yard dashes on record. One was Travis Hunter. The other was Caleb Downs. So, it takes a lot to push them up the board.
Absolutely. All right. So who could be next from the state of Florida? I know you have some interesting names here. Some guys who, as you mentioned, are already in college who are balling out. But who are some of your favorites in the high school class right now who might be like the next Malachi Toney, or might be the next, not to say the next Jeremiah, but like the next guy to kind of come out and really break out at the college scene?
The next Dallas Wilson or
yeah,
the next,
that could work.
The next Vernell Brown. Yeah, I think it's a really good year in the Sunshine State at wide receiver, right? So we said, hey, is this like a generational run? Is it a golden era? I don't know. I think Florida and the pass catchers, they are back. Let's start with the 5-star that's committed to Syracuse, and we'll see if this pledge ends up sticking. Calvin Russell out of Miami Northwestern High School. Bud, this guy's a tall drink of water, right? Over 6'5", elite basketball player. His mom actually played at Miami, but Calvin Russell was offered by like Dusty May when Dusty May was at Florida Atlantic 2 years ago. And you're like, all right, like we know FAU's football program isn't angling to also get Calvin Russell, but here's a basketball team that just made the Final Four, and they want this kid on the hardwood. He's also got the track and field markers. But I've been searching for a player comp for Calvin Russell. And last night it came to me. I think this guy's Jacoby Lane, right? And I pulled up Jacoby Lane's high school highlights. I'm talking about the wide receiver out of USC. And then I pulled up Calvin Russell side by side. I mean, these are uniquely dangerous targets down in the red zone. Jacoby Lane played some quarterback in high school. Calvin Russell has had to play some quarterback in high school. I think as a senior, what we've seen, this guy he's lengthy, he is stretchy, he has started to put on some weight, and he has found some physicality, very physical over the middle. He's committed to Fran Brown. He's committed to Syracuse. They did an excellent job getting in very, very early in that recruitment. And the other thing is, hey, like Syracuse throws the football around the yard. They've said, hey, you potentially could be playing some basketball for the Orange. A bit skeptical on that one, but this guy has a chance to be a difference maker. And I think if he's in the right developmental environment where, he's running a full route tree, where he's not taking some direct snaps, I think you can put a rocket on this kid's back.
All right. Managed to hit the mute button right before that sneeze. So I love your Jacoby Lane comp there. And I think if you look at what Jeff Nixon's offense did at Syracuse before the Steve Angeli injury, like I know Ricky Collins can't play, and you saw the whole sideline blow up over that. And like, obviously if you're a receiver on that team, you're pretty pissed right now because he just can't throw. But I think the proof of concept going from the guy they had last year to Angeli this year makes that a very attractive offense to play in. I see a little bit of Plaxico Burress there when I watch him as well. Like that, I think Lane is probably better as he becomes more physical. And Plax was taller than Calvin, I think, but maybe not by a lot. Also, you're a little too young for this, but Google Tamrick Vanover for Dallas Wilson. 1992 first team All-American Florida State guy. Got in a little bit of trouble, so career never took off in the NFL, but 87 for 1,200 back then when they only played like 10 games, and also like just dynamite big guy running in space, like 6'1", 225 type guy. So Tamrick Vanover is a dude. Also got absolutely laid out by Miami in one of those mid-90 games on a ball that Denny Cannell should not have thrown like at all. So, or maybe it was Charlie Ward, but anyway.
No, you gotta blame Danny on that.
I think so too. We'll give Danny some help for that here in about.
Is this like going to be available on YouTube?
There's probably Tamrick Vanover highlights. Yeah, I would think like big time, like thick, a little bit taller dude who just. I remember I was like Dallas Wilson when he turned the corner at that one OT7 game we were at and like beat the angle for everybody. I was like, oh, okay, I didn't realize he had that kind of juice. Like that's not normal at that size. Florida's got a total stud there. For sure. And that was great to see him break out. All right. So somebody who's not really breaking out yet, that would be the University of North Carolina. Chip's dad said that his seats are on the sun side and he would rather look into the sun directly than watch any more of this Carolina team. And it was pretty cleared out at half. And they Thank God for Oklahoma State. Otherwise, they really might be the worst Power 5 or Power 4 team in the country. They had a 1,400-word email sent to the boosters by GM Michael Lombardi, which was kind of wild. We're not going to read 1,400 words here. Tom did a dramatic reading of it yesterday on Cover 3, by the way, which was pretty epic and couldn't even get through the whole thing. What do you want to highlight from this? Look, I mean, it's pretty clear that Bubba Cunningham, the AD, did not want to make this hire. He was talking to various other guys. I know Carolina was looking at Matt Campbell at Iowa State, John Summerall at Tulane, like dudes who have an actual proven track record of working in college and doing well in college. And then the board just kind of, I think, forced this hire through. Is there any chance this works? How would you evaluate the Carolina plan right now? Because this looks bleak.
Yeah, but a lot of people have, I guess, piled on here, and it's certainly easy. I was watching them versus Clemson this past Saturday, and man, just not a lot of talent running around it. And where I think I can kind of jump in and provide some insight, Lombardi says in this manifesto that went out to boosters and supporters before the Clemson loss that, like, hey, this is our path to returning to prominence. And where my eyes instantly went is, hey, we're going to sign 40 high school players, right? We're going to take 2 recruiting classes in one in this class of 2026. So those are the guys that are going to sign 2 months from now on National Signing Day. Right now, I think North Carolina, they lost a kid on Monday, so they're at 36 commits. So according to Lombardi, they got 4 spots left. The recruiting class sits number 17. I think if you don't understand how these rankings come together, you're assuming that this is a group that could at some point down the line, help carry them to a college football playoff appearance. I'd push back a little bit on that, just because the more commits you have, the more the formula kind of carries that weight, and it can push you up the board, right? A class of 36 is going to rank a little bit higher than one that has 15 players committed. Now, there are some parts I like, but man, I have major questions about what this is going to look like at some point down the line if they really are going to pivot to the high school recruiting. Because let's look back at North Carolina's 2025 recruiting class. And I know Lombardi, I know Belichick, most of that staff came in late, but I remember sitting there in January and seeing some of the guys that North Carolina went after, and I thought they were falling for traps. And what I mean by that is, but I feel like I have a pretty good read of the inner workings at some of these like major high school programs that churn out multiple FBS players every year. And North Carolina went into some of them and took some of the guys that weren't even like starters as seniors. And I was saying, all right, they have no one on staff that is kind of providing some context on these players. So to me, they're going to sign 40 of these guys. And there are some I certainly like in North Carolina's class. How do we know a year from now that all 40 of those guys are still going to be in Chapel Hill on the roster? Like, there is going to be a lot of turnover with that type of volume. So it's an interesting pivot. And I'm wondering how much of the Chip Patterson, North Carolina faithful are really going to buy into this plan, because if they are going the high school route, we're talking 2-3 years from now where you would really see, the benefits from that class.
Yeah, I think it would cost them like $20 million to pull the plug now. Man, it might cost you a lot more to not pull the plug. Like this could be bad.
Well, like if I'm a North Carolina fan, Bud, I'm sitting there in hey, we're going to go high school recruiting heavy. It's like, okay, well, let's look at your 2025 recruiting class against Clemson. Only 5 of those true freshmen played, and the season's lost. So shouldn't you be turning to the youth, like trying to get these guys developmental snaps? Like, burn the bridges. Hey, let's go youth movement here. And you had 2 running backs, a wide receiver, and 2 defensive linemen on the rotation. Like it's a lot different evaluating NFL talent than it is high school talent. And I think it is taking these guys some time to figure it out. I had a group of 5 personnel staffer text me, and it's like, everyone keeps hiring these NFL guys, but at the end of the day, everyone's looking at the same tape, and you got to decide between this 3-star or that 3-star, and it's a lot different than it is in the NFL.
There's so much more information available on guys when they come out of college than there is in high school. Like, you've got to have guys who can help you contextualize what the player is, right? The difference in competition level is huge. It's harder to get some background info on some of these kids in high school than it is in college, just because the quality of competition is a little bit more standardized across the college space, especially with the portal. I mean, everybody at the lower levels now ends up portaling. Not everybody, but most everybody ends up portaling up and playing, at that higher level. Well, we'll see, man. Oof, that is rough. Speaking of rough, I'm not saying Arch Manning played well in the swamp. I don't think he did. That Texas offensive line is brutal. Like, I know Florida has a decent front, but Florida also had some of the worst pressure numbers in the country so far this year. And I didn't think there was another SEC team, like a real SEC team, not like Kentucky, Mississippi State, but like a contending type SEC team that was going to have a worse offensive line in LSU. And Texas is like, all right, hold my beer, watch this, because they were brutal in the swamp. Like, how? I don't think Kyle Flood's a bad O-line coach. This is so bad. Like, they're getting rocked.
It's recruiting malpractice, bud. Roster management malpractice. And I want to draw attention to everyone. Mike Roach from 24/7 Sports, Gabe Brooks from 24/7 Sports. They kind of outline how Texas got here. So you can certainly, Google it, go to the Horns 247. I'm sure it's up on there. Just explaining what happened up front. And Bud, to me, my biggest question mark about Texas coming into the season was replacing those 4 starters up front, because there was not some veteran presence, veteran additions coming in. They were essentially saying, hey, we're going to play these young guys. And that was concerning to me, because if you look at the past 3 recruiting cycles, Texas has signed just one top 247 offensive lineman. That was Brandon Baker out of California. That was a big victory for them. But besides that, it's been a lot of 3-stars. It's been a lot of guys where, hey, maybe the ceiling's there, but the floor is still pretty low. Or, hey, maybe he's got a high floor, but there isn't that type of ceiling. Past 2 cycles, so that have been 2024, 2025, Texas signed a total of 6 offensive linemen, 3 each year. You got a volume shoot up front, right? And if you want to look at last year's national title game, right? Ohio State versus Notre Dame, all 10 of the offensive linemen that started in that game. And yeah, there were some injuries, some moving pieces, but they were all homegrown players, meaning they were signed out of high school. They were developed, they were put on ice, they were given an opportunity to learn and be coached up. Texas just doesn't have, to me, the right parts, right? The right puzzle pieces to put this whole thing together. And I think it's a bit concerning, because Texas has all of this money, right? Texas was one of the first that had a NIL specific operation for the big boys up front. And I look at it now, and I was in the swamp on Saturday. Like, what happened? Where are these big individuals? And you can certainly point to some recruiting misses here and there. Gabe Brooks in the story also brings up the point that, hey, the Lone Star State just didn't really have a ton of difference makers maybe the past few years. Okay, that's fine. But Texas is a national brand, right? Yeah. We've seen them in California. We've seen them in Florida. How come they didn't go out and get the corner protectors that have, the developmental upside? I'm talking about guys like, Caden Proctor, Francis Mauigoa. Like, those guys are out there. Jordan Seaton. Texas never really made a move for those players. And I think, to me, in my seat, Arch is not the issue with that offense. Like, he has no time. And Bud, Florida's front was like without Caleb Banks, was out LJ McCray, a former 5-star. I know they got some older dudes, but that unit could be a little more supercharged if that game was week 1.
100%. They also lost who did they lost somebody they lost one of their contenders for the right tackle job in preseason camp. I know they've had, some other injuries there. They also don't feel like they have a real dude at receiver, like a guy that Arch can just kind of like latch onto. And in college, I hate the receiver by committee thing. Anytime I read receiver by committee in the preseason, I'm immediately red flagging that. Like, that is not a thing in college far more often than not. Okay. Occasionally you get like an LSU situation where you have a Jefferson and a Chase and whatnot. Ohio State, you know what? Okay, we'll stamp them as that. That's an okay committee to have, because you have, and USC's got one where they have two guys. But anytime it's like, yeah, we got like four guys we like. I'm like, okay, I have none you like then. If you tell me you got four you like, more often than not, that is complete media BS that the coaches are just saying, and it's passed along. Not like the media shouldn't pass along what the coach says, but I don't believe in receiver by committee until proven otherwise. I don't think they're really special there. I think they just have a bunch of decent guys, and their backs don't really make anybody miss. Like, they had a couple times where Florida had, like, they got Florida defenders one-on-one. Did any of those break out? I feel like Florida tackled them every time. It just feels kind of mid. Honestly, it's a little weird.
Yeah, but my question is, how does it get better for Texas? You look at this 2026 recruiting class, which certainly has star power across the board. Only one top 247 offensive lineman in John Turntine, who isn't a day one guy. Now, we love his long-term upside, what he could be at some point down the line, but he's going to need to add weight, right? His weight has fluctuated all over the place. Could he be a tackle? Yeah, sure. Probably more of an interior projection long-term. And the current college football landscape, like we said it, I think last week with Georgia, these teams that are feeling the ripple effect. How about Texas as well? I mean, the top-ranked player in the state, Felix Ojo, 5-star offensive tackle, he is committed to Texas Tech. The Longhorns, Kyle Flood, they were all in there, and he's going to go play for the Red Raiders. So it'll be interesting to kind of track, like, all right, do they make some runs at some of these blue chip offensive linemen and try to get them in the boat? I do think the 2027 cycle, which would be the juniors, I think that's probably the deepest it's been on the offensive line in a few years. But still, like, that doesn't solve any immediate problem for Texas. Like, those guys, you're not going to see them until 2029, 2030. So they're going to have to go into the transfer portal. But I don't know what's, just putting this out there. Like, who knows what's going to happen at Colorado. I don't think much has been made about Prime's comments after the weekend about his health, but
yeah,
if Jordan Seaton were to enter, man, you want to talk about a guy that's going to make some money. I think he's the highest graded offensive tackle per PFF when it comes to pass protection. A lot of schools could use Jordan Seaton if he were to look around.
No doubt. I mean, even if you think about, like, they really haven't played anybody at Colorado that has like real pass rush, he's still really playing quite well. And I think, he could be a $2 million guy potentially.
Oh, I think more than that.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I think he will set the market. But I also don't want this
just for 1 year.
Yeah, I mean,
I assume he's a 3-and-done kid. So, right? I would assume that.
I also don't want to like make this all negative on Texas. I will say this, like, there is some good news on the way.
Yes.
We're going through 2026, preparing and gearing up for next month's update ahead of signing day. I watched Jermaine Bishop yesterday, 5-star athlete commit, but I think this guy's Travis Hunter. Man, he is awesome. You can list him at any position, and I would be all in. He's played running back, he's played quarterback, he's played wide receiver, he's played safety, he's played corner, nickel. Oh, and he punts. He's the definition of a 3-phase impact player. He is the all-time leading receiver in the Houston Metro. So you think about all the guys that have come out of that area. Jermaine Bishop, who initially was playing with DJ Lagway, Florida's quarterback at that Willis High School. He's electric. I have never seen a guy move like him. And maybe I'm just, kind of gushing about the film breakdown last night, but he's an explosive mover, elite acceleration, can change directions on a dime. there was a time when I was like, give me Jermaine Bishop on defense. I'm all in as like an offensive playmaker. Just get this guy on the field. Let him make plays. I don't know if Texas is talking about, hey, doing the two-way thing, but he is someone where you could do it. This past Friday, Buddy caught like a quick out route, turned the corner, 75-yard touchdown. A few minutes later on defense, comes downhill in the alley, puts his helmet right on a football, and forces the turnover. He is just a flat-out football player. I am proud that we have him as a 5-star prospect for 24/7 Sports because I think he's one of the true difference makers in this class.
Does he just score a touchdown every play? Like this is really, really fun to watch, man. Or if not, he's making 6-7 guys miss here. This is awesome stuff to watch. And again, if you're listening to this on audio, I get it, and we certainly appreciate your download and your click and your like and your subscribe. But we really think this hour particularly is better consumed on YouTube. Claire, our producer, is doing a great job of putting up highlights here so you can watch Bishop. Nice throw there, by the way. So, I think this is something exciting for Texas. And if you're Texas, you have money, you can fix your problems. You shouldn't be down for long. Heck, man, if they beat Oklahoma this weekend, they're not out of the playoff race. Like I know they're not odds on to make it, but because they did play a real game in the non-con. They went and played at Ohio State, who I think is probably the best team in the country. But I mean, people from Oregon and Miami would disagree, and that's fine. I don't think it's by some huge margin. But because you played at Ohio State, I think Texas is going to have a shot if they can go 9-3. It just means you can't drop more than one more game.
I thought it was interesting, Sark's comments on Monday. He's like, well, we played at the Shoe and we played at the Swamp. How many teams do you want to put in those similar environments? And I bring that up, Bud, because I was texting with Trae Scott, one of the editors at 24/7 Sports, who is a Texas alum. And when I was at Florida on Saturday, I was like, man, it doesn't seem like Texas has really traveled well. And he pointed out all these other games, like, aren't they
the
at
Arkansas
this
game?
Year? Yeah, it's just very interesting.
It's going to be interesting to watch how they adjust, throughout the process there. All right, another thing to watch. We will definitely be watching this weekend. This is the quarterback matchup of the year with Oregon and Indiana. Dante Moore, Fernando Mendoza, two guys who are total studs, two guys whose games now are somewhat similar, right? Like a sniper, man. They see their shot, they take it. They don't really wait. Their path to getting here was pretty wildly different. And I think we should kind of dive into this a little bit on the Oregon and Indiana quarterbacks, respectively.
Yeah. Saturday, 3:30, CBS, some other shit. Make sure to tune in. I will be tuned in. The Ivins household will be watching Dante Moore versus Fernando Mendoza. But on CBSSports.com right now, the lead NFL draft analyst, Mike Renner, has Fernando Mendoza going number 1 to the Cleveland Browns, and Ryan Wilson has Dante Moore going number 1, I think, to the New York Jets. And as someone who saw both these guys throw in high school, someone who saw both these guys play up close and in person, they could not be more opposite in terms of the path they have taken to get where they are now. Now, Dante Moore, 5-star prospect, number 3 quarterback in the class of 2023. Remember, he was committed to Oregon for a very long time, flipped on signing day to UCLA. We saw a little bit of him as a true freshman. I thought he played better than the media made him out to be. Anyone making a road start at Utah likely not going to have much success. Since last year on ice, and he kind of became the forgotten man. And now you look up, everyone's in on Dante Moore after that game at Penn State. But he was the MVP of the All-American Bowl back in 2023. I kind of totally forgot about that, and doing some research on Dante Moore. Nice MVP story from your boy here on Dante Moore. It says, if you don't know the name now, get familiar. Maybe I was just a few years behind, but Dante Moore was 14 of 19 in that game, 156 yards and 4 touchdowns. He only played 2 quarters. And Dante Moore, the scouting report on him was always super clean mechanically, can make all the throws And I also thought he was an advanced decision maker, right? Always was protecting the football. He's out of the Detroit area, went 40-11 as a 4-year starter. So he was kind of like, the quarterback, not protege, but this is one of the guys, prototype. You knew he was going to be good. And it's funny, kind of a few years removed. I remember being at the Elite 11 finals this year, and Diabell was getting compared to Dante Moore. So Dante Moore has kind of, the quarterback trainers, like, he is stuck in their minds. That's a guy that they're comparing individuals to. On the flip side, Fernando Mendoza, Bud, number 134 quarterback in the country for us in the 2022 recruiting cycle. I had him as a 2-star prospect. He was a 2-star prospect, and thankfully moved him up to 3 stars at the buzzer. Fernando Mendoza, like, nicest kid you would ever meet. I can remember, man, when he was a sophomore in high school, came up and shook my hand, Mr. Ivins, nice to meet you. What'd you think of my performance today? And it was like, okay, you're 6'4". I think you're robotic. I don't see, like, the long-term upside here. And man, was I completely off the mark with Fernando Mendoza. But I actually went to the first game of his senior season. He played Luke Kromenhoek, the former Florida State signee who's now at Mississippi State. I went to that game, and nothing to write home about. Kromenhoek was the better quarterback. A few weeks later, Fernando Mendoza, he goes and he faces Chaminade Madonna Prep, which squad that has Jeremiah Smith, that has CJ Bailey, that has Edwin Joseph, that has D'Angelo Pond. Fernando Mendoza completed 3 passes in that game. 3 passes. So this is a guy that is a potential number 1 overall pick. Completed 3 passes in a game as a senior in high school. I mean, his developmental rise is crazy. And I haven't even got to, like, the big part here. Fernando Mendoza was committed to Yale. Like, he was going to play in the Ivy League. That's where he was going to school. He was going to Yale at the last minute, at the buzzer, after the early signing period. I don't think Ivies, they signed national letters of intent. Right before the next traditional February signing day. Cal is looking for a quarterback. They come out, they watch Fernando Mendoza throw. He ends up flipping and signing with Cal. And I guess the rest is history. But man, 2 guys, completely different paths. Everyone wanted Dante Moore. Fernando Mendoza, the summer before his senior year of high school, he threw at Miami, he threw at Georgia, he threw at LSU. None of them offered him a scholarship. And look at him now. I think a lot of those teams, maybe not, Miami, but they would take Fernando Mendoza as their quarterback.
Completely inexcusable for you to have this guy as a 3-star when LSU and Miami and all those schools had him in person, got a chance to work him out with their own coaching staffs, and also refused to offer. And I think he's way better than everyone those schools signed in that year.
Well, I mean, it's revisionist history. Hindsight's always 20/20, so it's easy to kind of look back.
Everybody expects you to get every single rating right, and it is what we should do. And maybe one episode we will, because I do have some receipts saved for people who gave you crap about ratings when you dropped guys late in the process because they got passed by other people who are better. And I will say the hit rate on those really good. But I don't know if we want to pull receipts, and maybe we will one day. I'll text you a few that I've saved. That's an interesting list, but we don't want to be the haters ball here. Somebody we can continue to heap some praise on, though, man. A big time quarterback battle. I think we should hit this probably in the show. Happened this weekend. Izzy Abrams, Trae Taylor, like a mega showdown of 2027 studs. Hit me with it.
Yeah, from one quarterback battle that is going to be in the spotlight to one that took place last week on Friday night that I think maybe there was only like 5 people that knew what was going on. And I'm one of those people. Izzy Abrams, Trae Taylor, they are 2 2027 quarterbacks. So they are juniors. Izzy Abrams, our number 2 QB, Trae Taylor, our number 4 QB. They are both from the state of Illinois. from my understanding, these guys do not get along right now. Is this going to be a budding rivalry over the next few years? Seems like that could be the case. I think both these guys, we're going to see them at the Elite 11 finals based on what they've put on tape as juniors. And man, Bud, 55-54 was the final score. These guys combined to pass forward over 1,000 yards. Izzy Abrams, 22 of 33 for 568 with 4 touchdown passes. 568. Trae Taylor, 25 of 37 for 445, 5 TDs and 3 rushing touchdowns. I want to get into both these guys individually and why, the common man needs to know who they are, because I think they have a chance to shape what college football is going to look like a few years down the line. Izzy Abrams, man, I love this kid. He is an elastic athlete, rips it around the yard, drive ball thrower. He has improved his mechanics. He is 6'4", 100 and maybe 90 pounds. So he's going to need to get a little bit bigger. But when I was breaking him down, I wrote down, reminds me of Nico Imalieva. 2 weeks ago, that would have been a bad thing to say. After this past Saturday's performance for Nico against Penn State, I think I can confidently put that out there. So that's what Izzy Abrams is to me, right? This guy that can beat you with his arm, can beat you with his legs, tons of exit velocity. His recruitment is fascinating. Mom went to Iowa State. Iowa State is like all in on Izzy Abrams. He's also taking game day visits to Tennessee, who's trying to kind of sort through their quarterback options. Remember, they got Faison Brandon, the 5-star committed in 2026. But, hey, teams are already moved on to the next cycle, and he's been to Wisconsin and Northwestern. I think this recruitment's going to take off once personnel departments, once coaches kind of dig into the tape. Izzy Abrams, a name to know, because this recruitment's going to be fascinating. I think it'd be awesome to see him in the Big 12, and I think he also fits what Tennessee wants to do on offense. Trae Taylor, on the other hand, guy I was kind of like skeptical on early on, very, very early. There was all this hype around him, had all these offers, but he hadn't really started any high school games. Well, he is starting games now, and he is coming along, and I think really maturing and growing up between our eyes. He is committed to Nebraska, and Matt Rule, we'll see what this year looks like. I know they fell to Michigan. But I was in Lincoln this summer, had a chance to see the facilities and really kind of get the plan for Matt Rule and his staff. They're going to take a really small recruiting class here in 2026, and that is because they have pushed all their chips in on the 2027 cycle. I know Blair and Gulo for 24/7 Sports, kind of wrote about these 2027 recruiting classes last week when the update came out. Hey, who has staying power? I don't know what he put for Nebraska, but I'm telling you, if Nebraska can get to double-digit wins, which Matt Rule has done at every stop in year 3, dude, Nebraska is going to challenge for a top 10 recruiting class in 2027. And Trae Taylor is a big reason why. He's a precision passer. I think he's close to 80% completion rate here as a junior. He sees it so well. He can make the throws, by himself. I love his internal clock. A lot of the high-profile recruits in the class of 2027 know who Trae Taylor is, and these guys have been to Lincoln, right? They have been there. They've been around him. Ahmad Hudson, we talked about him last week on the show, big 5-star tight end out of Louisiana. So, this is a fun little quarterback duel that's going on. Again, I don't think these guys like each other. I think we're going to get them at the Elite 11 finals. And hopefully maybe at some point down the line, they square off on Saturdays. Maybe it's a little Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence. We'll see. But man, 55-54, over 1,000 yards passing. These guys are the real deal. These are 2 quarterbacks to know. I think Trae Taylor's locked in with Nebraska. Izzy Abrams, I think this recruitment can go in any direction.
I'm excited to watch both these guys go forward. Nebraska's also got to find some way, portal this offseason or young guys stepping up to get some protection for Dylan Raiola, because his, Tom pointed out yesterday, I think he's the only quarterback in the country to have 2 of the lowest air yards per attempt games in the country in wins. Now I know last week's game was windy and Nebraska did win it, but that's a guy I think has the arm to push the ball down the field, and right now they just cannot protect it enough to actually let him get it, down the field. If they can get that right, I think he could have an awesome, final year there in Lincoln.
But that kind of ties like into our discussion about Texas, right?
Yeah.
Like, Nebraska was in the portal. They went after Elijah Pritchett. I would assume he's one of the better compensated transfer portal offensive linemen, and he just
can't play.
He hasn't been good enough, and so it's is it catch-22 like the right phrase here, or double-edged sword? The young 5-star offensive tackles usually aren't ready to go right away. Like, there are growing pains with them. Francis Mauigoa, Caden Proctor, like, both those guys struggled early on. But the thing is, you get their feet wet, you throw them to the fire early, the next 2 years, things are pretty nice. So I think that's the other kind of dilemma when it comes to building out those offensive lines. Like, okay, you take these guys, and the high school kids are certainly going to be expensive as well. Are you in position to go through some initial growing pains, knowing, hey, the grass is going to be much greener down the line?
I think with offensive line, man, I would. There's two kind of theories on this. One, the 5-star offensive linemen hit at a really high rate and actually are an excellent investment, and they generally play early. Like, so that's pretty proven with the data. On the other hand, if you're committed to spending a lot on the offensive line, maybe it's spend a lot across a lot of players. Maybe it's carry an extra guy or two, play the law of large numbers game. That'll be interesting.
Volume shoot.
Yes, exactly. Like you said earlier in the show. I will say with Nebraska, I know Rule has had a ton of turnover there in the personnel department during his tenure there. And I think maybe they finally got it right now, or at least are adding important pieces. There's a guy who, we can kind of say it now because like he's not at the tiny school anymore. But man, as far as like scouting guys in the Southeast, when Matt Pierce was at Coastal, he was always like one of the first guys following the dudes who would end up being like really good. Like, if you keep lists and you track like certain things, it was like, damn, this guy seems beyond these guys. And he actually, Hummer reported, I think in July, that Nebraska had hired him as recruiting coordinator. He's a Nebraska alum. I thought that was kind of a shrewd hire for Matt Rule as well. Because, if you're Nebraska, you're going to need to spend up in some positions. You're also going to need to find, some hidden gems. So maybe they finally got it right.
Yeah. And again, if they can like get to that 10-win mark or in the college football playoff conversation, I know they got some big ones on deck here. Like 2026, they have positioned themselves to not only like get these guys committed, but I think they've allocated a lot of funding and they've been very calculated, where that has a chance to be like the recruiting class everyone talks about for a long time with football.
No doubt. They got to be kicking themselves this year that they whiffed on the offensive and defensive lines in the portal, man. Like,
Williams in Nwaneri had a sack and a half over the weekend. Former 5-star, showing some signs of life. I love it.
All right. I mean, maybe we shouldn't call him a whiff just yet. Obviously, like not a lot of impact against Cincy, which they won, and then Michigan, which they lost. But like, I mean, parts of the schedule were kind of crumbling, man. Like, Iowa's offense still doesn't look right. Obviously, USC is very banged up. Penn State just lost to UCLA. If you had gotten the lines of scrimmage just somewhat like if your hit rate was just somewhat decent in the portal this year, you could be like an 11-1. Maybe like they were dominated by Michigan in the trenches and still lost by a field goal. And I know it was kind of a late BS score or whatever, but like that could be like if you hit the portal right and you got a little bit of luck, you could have gone undefeated this year. Now, granted, you also need the things to happen to some of these other teams, like Penn State falling apart a little bit. But I have hope for Nebraska long term for sure. I'm right there with you. I think they are doing more things right than they're doing wrong, at least.
Yeah. Last thing, but I'll just point out. I mean, we don't need to get into the nitty gritty, but I think one school that's been pretty active here over the past few weeks, capitalizing on what they've done on the field is Missouri, and they don't have a ton of guys committed. 14 prospects right now. They're sitting like 57th. Got a linebacker I like out of the state of Alabama, J.J. Bush, running back Terry Hodges out of Arkansas. But if you are trying to identify a program that is going to parlay what they're doing on Saturdays into success on the recruiting front, I think Missouri's one to keep an eye on here, especially if you're a believer that, like, hey, they are going to be in the CFP or the SEC conversation. Just wanted to give them a shout out. Little slower burn for them, but maybe they knew, hey, like, we got something here, and we're going to ride that momentum into recruiting season. But Missouri, obviously, Alabama on Saturday, but they're one that I'm tracking here closely down the stretch.
If they can get Bama this weekend, they're cooking with gas, man, for sure. So I've enjoyed this, man. We will do this again next Tuesday, and we'll see you guys for the Cover 3 Recruiting Hour.